It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I had the privilege to interview the Iowa Heartlanders PA announcer, Randall Schroeder. How are you doing today?
Doing just great, Brandon. Very happy to be here.
Thank you. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in working in professional sports as a PA announcer?
Yeah, I grew up with sports. My father was the sports information director at a small private college in Iowa, Wartburg College, for over 50 years. So the family story was that before I was 3 months old, I had already been in 4 states following the Wartburg football team. So I basically grew up in a press box at a press table at Wartburg. And so I've been a librarian, academic librarian for well over 30 years, and it was time to retire, but I wanted something to do, and so my dream is that the one thing that I really have enjoyed since I was in junior high was being in a sports environment, helping my father out, working on a press table, and I had dabbled in radio prior to that. It's easy for me. Um, and so, of all the different jobs that I've worked with since I was a kid, being the PA announcer was the one that was the most natural and was the most fun for me. And so, when this opportunity came up in Coralville, I jumped on it. And I was just begging to the fates that of all the things that I could do, that would be a nice, easy retirement job. Being the PA announcer for the Heartlanders would be it.
Of course, what was that experience like going to college and learning about broadcasting?
It was very interesting. Again, with Wartburg, because with my father working there, I didn't have to pay tuition. So, yay, free college education. But the nice thing about a small private liberal arts college like that is that it gives you an opportunity for a lot of hands-on learning, whether it be at the campus radio station, or working in the athletic department at Wartburg College. You just got a lot of great hands-on experience, and that's not just been true for me. Wartburg has had a great reputation for turning out journalists and broadcast journalists over the past couple of decades, and we have alumni that have worked for ESPN in Dallas, alumni that are the head anchors in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and Des Moines, Iowa. So I just basically jumped onto the shoulders of some greatness that went before me, and that provided a fantastic opportunity. I do want to give a shout out that one of my professors, Dr. Bob Smith, who taught in the communication arts department at Wartburg, he sadly is no longer with us, but his classes in public speaking were just absolutely invaluable, and things that I've carried with me to this day. He had a way of teaching students to become fearless public speakers. And I think it's because of Dr. Smith's mentoring that I'm perfectly comfortable in talking in front of a group of 3 or 5 people, or 10,000 people in a hockey arena. So again, I can't say enough about getting that experience at a small college like that, which might have been a little bit harder at a big university.
Of course, what was that experience like becoming the announcer for your local radio station at that college?
That was interesting. It was the Wartburg had the oldest FM radio station in Iowa. It started in 1948, and it wasn't because Wartburg was a great pioneer, but after World War II, FM radio frequencies were cheap, and Wartburg didn't have a lot of money, so they wound up being the first FM radio station in Iowa. But the facilities that we had at the time were interesting. I learned a lot about putting together radio broadcasts with spit and baling wire, and just going into any program with the idea that at some point some equipment would break down. I did get the experience that my junior and senior year, I was the head play-by-play announcer for the Wartburg basketball team. And at that time, Wartburg was coming off winning 8 conference championships in a row in the old Iowa Conference. So it was a big deal. And I knew that the town and the surrounding area were listening to everything I said, which was kind of an incubator where I learned important things like never assume that a mic isn't hot, even if you've gone to commercial. And again, you go to a visiting gym and you assume that the equipment's going to work, and then you find out 5 minutes before you're to go live that it's not working. I will happily say that Wartburg's material, equipment and facilities for broadcasting, and particularly the radio station, have become much, much better than when I was a student long, long ago. But it was a great experience. I've got some great friendships, and again, I learned a lot, and some of it was just trial by combat. I the story that just comes to mind was we were at a road game against our rival in Storm Lake, Buena Vista University, and in the first half we had gotten off to a big lead, 15, 18 points. And as sometimes happens in college basketball, Buena Vista just whittled away and whittled away and whittled away, and the team got tight, and we were making turnovers and throwing the ball away. And we had a first-year student, engineering, back in Waverly, the game, and Wartburg calls a timeout. We were supposed to go to commercial. I covered my mic, but I leaned over to my color guy, and all of a sudden, and so I was within range of his mic, and I said sardonically, "We're going to lose this sucker." And it went over the air because the first year student at the studio forgot to switch off our mics. And lesson learned. Got a fair amount of heat for not being particularly loyal, and I think I proved to be correct. We did wind up losing the game, but again, I've never assumed that anytime I have a mic anywhere within the range of my voice, which carries, as you can probably tell, to not assume that it's not a live mic.
Of course, what was that transition like from covering basketball and being a basketball college announcer to then getting into hockey?
Well, that was kind of interesting because, again, with the traditions at the college I went to, basketball was a big sport. Wartburg didn't even have a hockey team, but I was always kind of interested in the sport. I was always fascinated by the tradition, original six, and just the lore of hockey. But I was not a super big hockey state. I mean, it's not anything like Minnesota or Michigan or anything like that. But one of my library jobs was at Ferris State University in Big Rapids, Michigan, which is a college hockey powerhouse. They've made it to the Frozen Four a couple of times. And so when I got to Ferris, the sports information director knew that I'd had experience doing PA work. And their problem was that they could never get anybody to do basketball because everybody wanted to do hockey. And Ferris is one of those interesting schools where they have a Division I hockey program, but all the rest of their sports, basketball, football, and so forth, is Division II. So they said, "Do you want to do basketball?" I said, "Love to do basketball." And so I became the basketball announcer for both men's and women's. But what the idea was is that if a regular hockey PA guy could not make it or had a conflict or whatever, I was the backup. And so that was my first experience with big time Division I sports. That there was about 2 to 3 games a year where the guy couldn't make it, and I was on the hook. I remember my first game vividly because the morning before they were going to drop the puck, the athletic director called me up and said, what time can you be at the arena? And I said, well, what time do you want me there? He says, well, can you be there an hour and a half ahead of time to meet with the producer? And I had to pause a moment instead of going, producer? All my experience up to that point in time had been Division III sports. Producing at Knights Gymnasium at Wartburg was me waving to the athletic director and telling him to turn off the music so I could do the national anthem. But in D1, we have producers. They sat in the booth with us. They handled the music. They made sure I got the commercials in and all that sort of thing. And this was, that's when I said going, Toto, we're not Division III anymore. But I got to call games against Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan State, and that was just when I realized is that, wow, this is big time. This is something else that I could do. So I had that amount of hockey experience, and then when the Heartlanders job opened up, and I sent in my materials to Jarrett, the game day manager. I was one of the few people that had any kind of hockey experience as a PA announcer in the Iowa City area at all. And so I just was able to parlay this fill-in experience at Ferris State into the job with the Heartlanders. And that was great. One fun story about that, we were having the game against Notre Dame. And again, I'm still getting used to Division I. And honestly, I don't care who you are. The first time that you get on the PA and say, and now the starting lineup for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, granted, it wasn't football, but you get a little excited when you realize that, what you're actually doing. And the producer came up behind me, put his hand on my shoulder and said, try to be as excited about the home team. Why don't you? Sorry, it's Notre Dame.
Of course, what was that experience like, obviously getting to call the games against Notre Dame and Ohio State?
Well, again, it was a little bit surreal because honestly, it's just a game. This was not anything that I hadn't done for 20 years. But there is always that thought in the back of your mind is that there is a huge difference between, calling a penalty on Notre Dame or Ohio State than calling a foul on Luther College in Decorah, Iowa. It just felt almost a little bit like an out-of-body experience because, it's me. It's what I've been doing for all these years of my life. But now all of a sudden I'm doing what I watch other people do on ESPN or ABC or something like that. And it's like, there's just that moment where you just can't believe you're doing this. But the one thing I learned from watching my father as a sports information director for 50 years is that you got a job to do. You need to be a professional. You can't let the moment overwhelm getting the job done. And so there may be this turmoil going into in my head, but it was still important that I get the job done and that I do it professionally and well.
Of course, what was that process like for you to come to Iowa Heartlanders and become the next PA announcer for them?
Well, it was actually kind of amazing because again, with Iowa not being much of a hockey state, we do have minor league hockey in Cedar Rapids, which is like 20 minutes away from where I am, and in Des Moines and Dubuque, which are a couple hours away. But largely anybody who has any experience with hockey is already working for Cedar Rapids, Waterloo, Dubuque, Des Moines. And so, Iowa City, of course, we're the home of the University of Iowa Hawkeyes, which has a club hockey team, no recognized hockey team. This is a basketball. I mean, the big sports in Iowa City during the winter are basketball and wrestling, and it's probably a toss up as to which one's bigger. And so when the Heartlanders were looking for another PA announcer, I saw the job on LinkedIn on Thursday. I sent in my resume on Friday. I think I got called on Monday. I interviewed the following week, and then I had the job the following week. So, and what I understand is that, there's a lot of other people that had applied for it, but nobody that had even a small amount of experience calling Division I hockey. So, it was important to them that they hired somebody who knew the game, who understood what is a good call at a professional hockey game. And I seemed to fit the bill. And so, again, it was a dream come true, because this is what I was dreaming of when I retired from being a college librarian. And I was doing the PA on the side at the various colleges like Ferris State and Wartburg that I was doing. And I stopped doing it. I didn't understand at the time how much I missed it. And, there were times when I'd walk into a basketball gym, high school game where my sons were playing in the pep band, and, you hear the balls dribbling on the court, you smell the popcorn, and I had to consciously make the decision not to walk to the press table and sit down, because that wasn't my job anymore. So again, to have this opportunity to do it one more time, and to do it in an arena, in a professional arena, and the Heartlanders have a brand new arena that they just built in Coralville 3 years ago, because the team came with the arena, and it's such a fantastic facility and to work in. And I don't have to worry about equipment breaking down ever. So this is definitely a huge step up. So I guess this is my long rambling way of saying that I feel like I just fell backwards into a pile of good luck. And I am so grateful to the Heartlanders for giving me the opportunity and for making me live my dream right now.
Of course, what was that feeling like the first time you got to step into the arena and get to live out your dream to become a professional PA announcer?
That was another out of body experience. Again, just the idea of realizing that I had made it to a professional level. It's one thing to do it for colleges, and and I gotten paid before. So, but the fact that I was now calling games for players that were 2 rungs away from being in the NHL was, it was just amazing. My only regret is that naturally my father grew up as a huge sports fan. I don't think you can be a sports information director for 50 years and not be. And he wasn't a hockey guy. His sport was baseball. Sports were baseball and football. But I just know that he would have been so proud to see that we had made it to the pro level. I wish that he could have be there to see and hear at least one of my games. But, and not to be too weird about this, that first time I did it, I'm down on the ice. That's where my position is. And then to get starting lineups, pronunciation, starting goalies, I have to go up to the radio booth, which is on the other side of the arena and up in the top row. And so as I came back down and I'm walking through the tunnel back to my spot on the ice, I swear to God, I could feel Dad walking behind me. It was just an amazing experience. Honestly, I don't even remember the result of the game because it really wasn't important. It was the fact that I was there and I was doing it. And I don't think I even had a bad case of the nerves about it. Once I got the first announcement done and I got into it, again, whether I'm doing it at an Extreme Arena for a professional hockey team or whether I'm doing it at Knight's Gymnasium for a D3 basketball team, it was it was getting the job done. And so, once you get into it, you don't really think about it anymore. But it was just those moments leading up to it and getting the starting lineups. And it's like, holy cow, I'm here.
What does a typical game day look like for the Iowa Heartlanders as the PA announcer?
Well, it's pretty straightforward. We usually for an evening game, first puck drops at 7 o'clock. So at 5 o'clock, the Heartlanders kindly feed the media crew in the media room. So I show up at 5 o'clock, drop my stuff off at my spot at my seat at the ice, and then make it to the media room. Then whoever our local sponsor of the day is, whether it's the local pizza place or Mexican place or whatnot, provides dinner that night. It was actually one of my favorite parts of the day was the camaraderie of the media room, because it would be us, it would be any TV, radio, newspaper media, and the off ice officials. We're all in the same room, and it turned out that the team photographer, his daughter is currently going to Wartburg College. We became really good friends, and I also became good friends with some of the off ice officials too. So that was just, it was just a good time to relax, get focused, get something into yourself. Then I get done with that. I would head back. I would pick up the day's rosters. And again, minor league hockey. So it truly is the old sports shtick of you can't tell the players without a program, because, I do one game, Heartlanders would go on the road, I'd come back, and there'd be 10 new guys on the roster, or 10 guys that were on the roster that had been promoted to the next level up or whatever. So, make sure that I knew who the new guys were. I would head up and talk to David, our radio announcer and head of communications, make sure I got the pronunciations right. As we were talking about before we went on the air, is that my last name looks different than how it's actually pronounced. And when you have hockey players from many countries around the world, that happens a lot. And so it's important to me, because it's important to me that other people get my last name right. It's important for me to announce the players' names right. And that's probably what I work on hardest of anything, is the prep of making sure that I can get the last names correct, and I'm comfortable doing it, and that it becomes second nature, which doesn't seem like much, but it's harder than you think. So I get that done. I come back down to the ice. I go through the script to make sure, is there anything new? Do we have any new promotions? I check in with Jarrett, the game producer, to make sure what he wants, if there was anything from the last game that could be better, and then just get prepped. And probably the most nerve-wracking part is starting lineups, because you have to time it. Because they're coming onto the ice, they're coming through the dry ice fog with the spotlight, so I can't see who's coming through the tunnel. So I just have to go on faith that I have the order of the players right, I have the right rhythm, so that a guy's skating onto the ice and I'm doing somebody else's name. And so that's the part that I usually get most uptight about, because the timing's so tricky on that. And then we go to the national anthem, and then we drop the puck, and then actually I can relax, because calling hockey is really easy compared to other sports. I don't have to do things in time. I'm not calling the goal as soon as it's scored, but I have to wait for the the officials to confirm who got the score and who got the assist. I announce it later. I wait till the producer gives me the high sign to make the announcement. And you do the promotions, and then finally the last kind of nerve-wracking thing is at the end, when you do the 3 stars of the game, because you want to be quick, because the fans are filing out. And so you got to get the names down quick. You want to make sure you got the pronunciations quickly. You want to make sure you got it. And again, that's another one where we got to get it in the right order, or they skate on at the wrong time. And then after that, I tell everybody to have a good night. I turn off the switch. I go home.
Of course, as a PA announcer, How important is the preparation of preparing how to pronounce their names?
I think it's incredibly important. I think the players appreciate it. Uh, there are some players that, particularly the visitors, that they just resign themselves to the fact that the hometown announcer is probably not going to make the effort and that their names will get mangled more often than not. I take pride in the fact that and I'm not going to say that I've never mangled a name before because I'm human, you just do. But I try to make the effort to get it right. And I've had players, particularly players from the other teams, say that they really appreciate the fact that I do try to take the effort. And that was one thing that always drove me crazy, especially my early days in college, is that there are so many casual sports fans out there, and they watch sports on television at the local bar, and they said, "Oh, I could be an announcer. That's easy." And they'll pretend that they're an announcer over their beer at the bar or whatever. And it's like, you just can't walk into a gym or an arena and sit down and do this. It takes a little bit of work. You have to know the game. You have to understand the strategy a little bit. And you do have to work on the preparation for the names. Now, the one nice thing about small college sports in Iowa is that several of our colleges they were started by immigrants. So, for instance, one of the colleges that that I dealt with a lot was Central College in Pella, Iowa, which was started by Dutch immigrants in the 19th century. And so, a lot of the students that go there, if their parents and grandparents went there, they're Dutch immigrants. And man, do they have some last names that do not look like, they are not pronounced anywhere close to what they look like on the paper. So I just learned to assume that, and that most of my game time prep is just making sure that I get the names right. And to me, that's just one, it's polite. People should be called what they want to be called. And secondly, it's professional. And that's one of the attributes I think I inherited, or at least I watched from my dad doing it as a sports information director, is that you want to be professional. You want to do it as best you can. And for the PA announcer, it's getting the names right.
Of course, as a PA announcer in the ECHL, what is it like obviously seeing those players go on to the NHL level and play for the Minnesota Wild?
It's crazy, and it's also one of the most gratifying things. It actually did happen for me in I believe it was the first round of the playoffs for the Wild. I think it was against Dallas. Anyway, they called up the Heartlanders goalie. I think he had made it to the Wild, but our starting goalie for most of the season actually became the Wild's third goalie for the playoffs. Now, the chances of him playing were vanishingly small, but it was just the fact of seeing his name and seeing him in the pregame skate while they were getting ready to drop the puck up in St. Paul was just, it gave me goosebumps to see that. And actually, one of the most fun things about the job, and I think this is true of any minor league sport, if you're a fan, is watching. Minor league sports isn't so much about wins and losses, it's about player development. And for the knowledgeable fan, if you can see where a player is in October and what that player becomes in May and June, it's really fun to watch. The pass that they couldn't make in October all of a sudden becomes a goal in June. And then to see them take it to the next level is even that much more fun and that much more gratifying.
What are some of your famous catchphrases that you use for the Heartlanders?
I don't know that I have a lot, but the one that I've done this at every place that I have ever worked, and I brought it to the Heartlanders, and that is at the end of the game. My family's originally from Wisconsin, so my dad is a baseball guy. God help me, I was brought up a Milwaukee Brewers fan. And so as a kid, I spent a lot of time at Old County Stadium. and they had a PA announcer by the name of Bob Betts, also an Iowan. And Bob would always sign off every Brewers game by saying, "The Brewers, thank you for coming out to today's game, and please drive home safely." And so as kind of my homage to Bob, because like any other PA announcer, you go to games, you hear things you like, and you'll mimic them. My salute to Bob Betts at Old Milwaukee County Stadium is that I always end every Heartlanders game with, "The Heartlanders, thank you for coming out to tonight's game, and please drive home safely." So that's my big catchphrase.
Of course, what is that like calling games against those teams like Kansas City and Willard Nellers?
Well, it was interesting, again, since this is my first season, is that I don't think I understood the rivalries. I do now. And it was just interesting to see as the season goes on, that how the vibe of the game went depending upon who we were playing. And then, of course, hockey has about as many unwritten rules as baseball does. And so, something would happen at a road game, which I don't go to. And then, we would get back home to Extreme Arena. We drop the first puck, and all of a sudden a fight would break out. And you're sitting there going, "What just happened?" Well, then he just realized it was, in fact, something that had happened in Wheeling or Kansas City or whatever. And that this was just to let the other team know that we were paying attention, and no, you cannot slam our best player into the boards for no good reason. So that was, and again, pro hockey, even at the AA level, is just a little bit more intense, and you get away with a little bit more than you do in college hockey, even at Division I. So, I saw hits in this season that would probably get you a game misconduct and out of the game at Ferris State, but maybe got you 2 minutes for fighting here. But that's to be expected. That's just the nature of the game. So we did have one game where we actually wound up having more penalty minutes given than there were actual minutes in the game. And so that was I was late getting home that night. So
what are some of your favorite memories and moments calling Iowa Heartlander games?
I would say, other than my first game, which was that's in the category all by itself. But one of the games I really loved calling was the last game we did before the Christmas break. Everything was festive. The Zamboni crew and my producer were all dressed up in these really loud Christmas suits. And then we had the teddy bear toss onto the ice. And it was just, everybody in the arena seemed, I don't know, there was just this kind of funny, happy Christmas vibe to the whole thing. I don't think we even had 2 minutes of fighting penalties with it. So everybody just had this kind of Christmas spirit that was just kind of cool. And then that particular night, I pick up my coat in the locker room. I walk out into the parking lot, and there's just this gentle snow falling down. And it's like, wow, this is almost like a movie. We had some games that went to sudden death, shootouts, 3-on-3 hockey. And I believe I called the very first one in franchise history that the Heartlanders won. And that was just a great call. The arena was exploding and rocking, and the players were dogpiling at each other in the center of ice. And that, for a young franchise that has had its teething pains, it was just so exciting to see all that joy and then have the privilege to call it. And the other one was the last 2 games of the season, when the fans, we hadn't had a great season, but the fans really came out for the last two games, which I thought made me pretty optimistic about the future of hockey in Iowa City. And the team had just improved so much from the first game to the last game. And again, it's just that joy that you get as a sports fan following a developmental league, to see that progress from beginning to end. And yeah, it made me pretty optimistic about the future for the Heartlanders.
What would you tell your younger self now, looking back on your career as a PA announcer?
Always assume that every mic in front of you is hot. But yeah, that and preparation. Do not walk into a game cold ever. And be professional. And that is, I mean, yes, you are part of the entertainment for the home team. Yes, you get more excited for the home team than you do for the visitors. But there's just lines that you don't cross into going from being professional to clownish. Yeah, for my younger self, the most hideous mistakes I made were assuming that the mic in front of me was dead.
What advice would you give those people that are looking to get started in their career as a PA announcer?
Well, first of all, understand that, again, there's a lot of preparation that goes into it. You probably spend as much time before the game getting ready as you are during doing the game. And and you also need to understand the game. If taking a class in college on basketball theory or whatever, or just read as much as you can. When you go to games, watch, observe, see what the good announcers are doing, and try to incorporate as much of that as you can. I mean, my path to this is a little bit unusual. I didn't take a direct there. It was, my earliest memories, 8-9 years old, sitting near the press table, or in the press box at Wartburg with my dad. And so I had, before I even turned on the mic for the first time myself, I had 20 years of watching somebody else do it and what they did to do it well. And, not everybody can replicate that. So, in some ways that was fortunate for me. But it also feels like it was something I was kind of born to do. So, like I said, I feel extremely happy, and I am so grateful for the Heartlanders to give me this opportunity. And I hope to continue it for a long time.
What advice would you give those people that are looking to work in professional sports as a PA announcer?
Again, it's the preparation thing. Just assume it's a lot of fun. Sometimes you sit down and you can't believe you're getting paid to do this, but it is work, and there is an expectation. And the other thing is to understand, as Meredith Wilson said, the Music Man, you got to know the territory. How you call a professional hockey game versus how you call a Division III basketball game are two entirely different things, or a baseball game or a football game. Understand the sports you're doing, understand what the expectations are, and understand that it's different every time. The other thing, and this is just my own pet peeve, and maybe it's because of the generation I am, I can't stand announcers that, I call it going NBA on the announcement. Everything is that they're just screaming into the microphone. There are some of us who go to the game that try to follow along, sometimes even keep score. And so if I'm keeping score, I need to hear who scored the basket, not this indistinct roar followed by a number. And so it's a little bit like being a pitcher. You have to learn how to change speeds. Sometimes you get super excited. Sometimes you are yelling into the mic. Sometimes you just have to make the announcement. And so, the best ones are the ones, they have their catchphrases, they have the way they call things, but sometimes it's just as much inflection as anything else. So it's a little bit of a performance, but not your performance changes based on who your audience is. So understand who your audience is.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media along with the Iowa Heartlanders at?
Good question. Well, the Heartlanders have their own webpage in Iowa City, and that's yeah, just Google Iowa Heartlanders. I believe we're the only professional team with that nickname, and you find the webpage. The 2024 season is out. We'll be starting in October, and I can't wait.
Thank you again, Randy Schroeder, for your interview, and best of luck in your future as the PA announcer for the Iowa Heartlanders.
Thank you, Brandon. It was a pleasure being here. Thanks for asking.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Randy Schroeder, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thanks.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.